Mhm.
There's a survey to do, that white piece of paper is a survey to do. Oh, well, is that? That's all. There we go. Great. They use the next building. Oh, he's back. I like it. My kids have been calling me that too. Oh, really? I was like, that's very nice. Good to see you. Great to see you as well, honey. We assume it went well? Yeah. Hospital. Oh, I didn't even hurt. No, couldn't do it. There you go.
Yeah, it went. It went as almost as well as it could. Pretty good. What?
Is it defined?
So they didn't have to do the NCL or meniscus, just my ACL. But the other ones weren't healed, they're healing, so I have to wear the brace a little longer than I want to. But it was just one instead of all three, so could have been way, so. Yeah, so going the right way, just one.
I hope you give yourself time and patience.
Yes.
To do that, yeah, this. You know, that's one of the things when you're a parent.
Yeah.
You're just like.
Oh, I know.
And then always causes problems.
It's very, it's hard to have time with three of them.
Right? Here you go. Thank you. Yeah, they get kind of together. Yeah. So, yeah, if you could, before we get started, take a little survey on the white piece of paper. Are they on white? Okay, so what's the sweetest things the kids have done since, you know, it's funny because every once in a while they show up, you're like,
Yeah.
okay, there's hope.
Yeah. And then like yesterday, they're like, we know we're the biggest mall in the area and trying to walk, you know, like they're so excited. You know, they're there sometimes.
Yeah. What is the biggest mall in the area? I haven't been to the mall, I swear to God, in 20 years.
I said that we went to this pavement canyon, like the one in the.
Yeah.
And that mall was massive.
And then
So
survey.
I was like, I'll sit here. Come back and get that when you're done, you know? I'll be here in the food court.
Well, that's a surprise.
Shocker, I'm sure. I don't like that mall because they don't have a cookie place. I go to the mall, they don't have cookies.
This is Fields?
Yeah.
You're like,
I prefer malls with cookie stores.
Money here, you go. You know, would you like to pick them? I'm not feeling like to sit there and think of, it's a joy. That's weird. It fits exactly in that. Oh, how funny. That little.
It was a design.
Sure, I'm sure that. I mean, like, spot on.
I got there.
I love stuff like that.
Right? When it fits and when it feels like it was meant to be.
There's. Great for now, great for later. 16.
9:45.
Thank you, yes. I know. Yours to please. And then if you could take a little white survey before we get started, that's really survey, that would be really helpful. I'm going to thank you. Pacing you down to give you a better give you a gift. Yeah, whereas I've got 3 more. Yeah, I've got 1 more. How many more do you expect? That's usually about those.
I mean, this is most of them for sure.
Okay,
Chip wishes.
good, and if not, I have, oh, you know what, I have some more. They sort of got interspersed with, oh, we have some.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're good. We're good with.
UPR packet wealthy. We are. Anyway. All right, good morning. It's so nice to see all of you. I feel like it's been a really, really long time. I had ditched the crutches last time I saw you, and now back to the crutches. Upgrade on the brakes, right? But my surgery went okay, hanging in there. Kind of a weird, like, we'll talk more about it on, I'm not on Wednesday, but on Monday. So it's kind of a weird week in the sense that we have today and then Wednesday we have a flex day. So we don't have class, well, we have training in class, but you don't. So you get a little break, it'll give me a little break since as I ease back into it. So in a way it's perfect timing, in a way it's weird timing. But when I see you on Monday, I'll tell you a little bit more, and we'll kind of talk about everything that we've done since and then move forward. But I just wanted to say it's really nice to see you. I'm glad to be back. And we have a wonderful guest speaker today. I want to let you know that I will be sitting right here while she's talking. This is, and she's going to say this as well, but kind of a sensitive topic. If you need to step out, that's totally fine. You have to check in with me first really quickly. Don't make me chase you because it's been easier. Right? I'll trip you as you go out, right? I can say their weapons anyway. Right? I feel like I just tap on everyone with them right now. So you have to check in with me really quickly. But otherwise, I'm going to hand you over to Allison.
Wonderful. Well, good morning, everybody. After I've accosted everybody with papers and Mr. Benby's. So my name is Allison Barton. I'm the coordinator of the Student Health Center here on campus, which I want to make sure everybody knows about. So how many of you have heard about the movement about the Student Health Center here on campus before? So many of you, that's great to hear. For those of you who don't know, and for those of you who don't know about us, we moved. So we're in Fountain Hall now. We're upstairs right next to financial aid. You have cards in your packet about our services that don't have the new address on them. So I just want to make sure you know, and you can even write it on there. It's Fountain Hall 211. That's where you check in. We're sort of in several different spaces up there, but that's the check-in space. And once you check in and become visitors, we will take you to the right place. As your professor mentioned, this is a pretty sensitive topic, and some of you maybe are have had experience either with a friend or loved one who's attempted or attempted suicide, or actually finished, with suicide, or you yourself have had suffered from depression or anxiety, and had suicidal thoughts, or even attempted suicide in the past. We want you to know that we understand that this could be a tough topic for you. And if you need to leave because this is a tough topic for you, please check in with either me or your professor before you go. We want to make sure you're okay. If you are feeling not okay, we can walk you to the street. I can walk you to, some of us can walk.
I can follow you slowly.
To the Student Health Center to get some help. And even if you have to get up to take a call or go to the bathroom or something like that, just check in with us and let us know that that's why you're leaving. Otherwise, I have chased people. I have chased you down, and it's from caring. I just don't want you to hurt yourself for it. Move on through your day without assistance if you need it. Does that make sense? So this session today is called QPR, and it means question, persuade, refer, and it's sort of like CPR, right? But it's to save the life of somebody who may be suicidal. Okay, so there are some simple steps we can take to prevent the person from doing that or dissuade them from doing that, right? And so that's what we're going to learn today. And at the end, you will get a certificate that you have finished the course, and now you are prepared to help somebody who may be in that kind of crisis. Do want you to know that we've been doing this on our campus for many, 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 many years. It's been a very effective strategy with students and employees. We've had students actually walk other students over to the student health center and get them the help they need because they were able to recognize the signs and symptoms of suicidal thought, or suicidal intent, or even anxiety and depression. And I think they just feel very aware of it and are able to help other students out with it, or family members as well, or friends, right? Does that make sense? It was developed by Dr. Paul Quinault, who was he's a suicidologist, psychologist up in Washington State, and has developed this whole curriculum that they update periodically, and that they allow us to update with local data and local information too. So with that in mind, that's what we'll be doing today. So the first half is just sort of background information, and the second half, we're actually going to practice the skills just as though we were doing a CPR class, right? So there's theory at first, and then there's practice afterwards. Okay, does that make sense? Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns before we get started? All right, well, let's go. Let's do this thing. Did everybody get a Mr. Bendy, by the way? Who did not get one of these? We just like you to have something to fiddle with while we're doing this. And these are yours to keep. They're really good when you're feeling stressed out to have something to fiddle around with, right? Does that make sense? Okay, good. Oh, poor thing has no idea what's going on. Go ahead and leave that. And oh, that's the other thing. Did everybody complete the white pre-survey? A white piece of paper in your packet, there's a pre-survey. All right. So, as I mentioned before, these are the goals of PPR. So we want to make sure that you understand how to recognize warning signs of somebody who might be thinking about killing themselves. We want you to feel confident that you can boldly intervene, get the person the help they need, refer somebody to help early, right? Get the help they need from a professional. So once again, you are not going to be the ones that are treating the person, right? You're not going to give them therapy or any of that. You're going to get them to the help they need. Just like if you were doing CPR, you wouldn't be, doing all the cardiology for the person. You would simply be doing CPR and then calling 911, right? Well, this is the same kind of idea. The other thing we want to do, and it's really important, and I think it's been very effective, is decreasing the stigma of depression and anxiety and other mental health issues. And frankly, decreasing the stigma of getting help if you feel like you're suicidal. We want you to get help. That's a symptom, right? That we want you to get help for, right? It's not intended to be a form of counseling or treatment of you or by you, right? That's not what this is. It is just intended to offer you hope that you can help somebody else through a positive action that you learned in this class. Bless you. All right. So next, I'm just going to show you several different kind of statistics on a national, state, and local level, just so you can see that this is really a thing and it's worth our time and attention, right? So bless you. Some of these statistics seem like they're very old. It takes a while to get them compiled. So they're pretty newish and they don't change a lot, right? But in 2021, over 48,000 people died by suicide in the United States. That's one death every 11 minutes. And then you can see that even more adults made a plan, and even more, add on to that, 1.7 million adults attempted suicide. There are a lot of people that seriously think about suicide. We hear about that all the time. It doesn't mean that they're going to do it, but a lot of time that you have to seriously think about it before you do it. So that's a sign that we want to be aware of and concerned about. So in California, you can see that there were
over 4,000 suicides in 2020. That's 10.4 suicides per 100,000 people. And that's kind of how we do public health statistics. Like, what is the rate per 100,000 people, right? So it's a little bit lower than in the national scene, but still too high, right? And you can sort of see how it's distributed in age groups, right? What is the highest rate? Where is the highest rate of suicide? Which age group? Yeah. Yeah. Closely followed by the 75 to 84. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that might be, but it's really just an interesting thing to kind of see where the bump ups are. Okay. So in Ventura County, suicide was the 9th highest cause of death. During COVID, the height of COVID, it wasn't on here because COVID overtook it, but now we're back to suicide being one of the top 10. So at Moorpark College, we do a survey. And in fact, I don't know how many of you got your survey link. A few of you, actually, all of you got a survey link. You have to check your email, but we're now doing our triennial health survey of students, and all of you received a link in your email. We'd love you all to take the survey. It's like 20 to 30 minutes. That's how long it takes to do it. Some of your instructors are even giving extra credit for that. But that's where we gather health information of our students here on our campus. And the other 2 colleges are doing it at the same time. So we'll be able to have a good big picture of our district. But in our last one, what we learned was about 4.7% of cis men, 4.2% of cis women, and then 4.8% of transgender nonconforming people report that they had attempted suicide. That is significant, right? In the last 12 months, that many people, that percentage, that's a lot of people. So it just tells you that it's a problem here where we are too. All right, so we also know that culture matters, that stigma and judgment prevent people in the United States from seeking treatment for their mental health conditions. And that some subcultures, so not just our general culture right here, but some subcultures really are, they believe that mild depression or anxiety would be considered crazy, and so they're not likely to seek help for that, and so that prevents a lot of people from getting in and seeking help. And that's a really important thing that we believe that when we talk openly about this, that helps us, decrease stigma so that people will be willing to get help, the help they need. We know that mental health among the Black community, there are some significant pieces here too, that Black boys are ages 10 to 13 are 2 to 3 times more likely to die by suicide than white boys in the same age group. Black men are particularly concerned about stigma around mental health, so less likely to seek services. The YRBS, which is a high school survey, that's a national survey, they showed that 15.2% of Black adolescent females reported previous suicide attempt in the last 12 months. And then you can see his 9.4% for non-Hispanic white females. And in youth from this age period, the era of 2001 to 2017, Black females experienced a 183% increase of rate of suicide. Black males also increased. So you can see it, blah, 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 number soup, but all that to say it's a really big deal. It happens, it's prevalent, it's across all different ethnicities and races, right?
Do you have a reason for that ginormous uptick?
Oh gosh, I don't know that anybody really knows the reason behind
What are the
that.
theories? I mean,
No,
183%.
well, I mean, if you look at what kinds of things have happened, that's a great question. What kinds of things have happened in that period of time, though? We have the giant uptick of social media and bullying online. We have the George Floyd and all of those, that kind of racial strife in that period of time too, right? Or just immediately preceding it. We have all kinds of things like that going on that could increase the rate of suicide. Yeah, we don't live in little bubbles, that's for sure. And all of the things that are happening around us are the things that affect that.
But as we talk as a group about the importance of mental health,
Yeah,
the importance of suicide, and we look at those statistics, it doesn't really mean shit, right? Unless you know the reason why.
100%.
So it's just
100%.
like, well,
Right.
So,
No.
So
No,
I'm not discounting
no. Right.
the
No,
presentation.
for
side, but
sure.
Like, well, okay, and
Right. No, like why is that happening? Would be nice to get beneath it or just be aware of it.
something.
So, and I can tell you, yeah. 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 Uh-huh.
Was the 2017 the last year of data that they reviewed before they?
Of this,
Yeah.
and the data is not real time. It takes a while to catch up. Yeah.
Is it harder to get an accuracy of how many, let's say, suicides per 100,000? Why it was posted in 2001 that it would explain?
It's always harder. It's always hard to get data anyway. I mean, these are I'm willing to bet 100% underreported, right? And there are a lot of things that count as that people don't count as suicide, that are like a lot of car accidents are probably more of a suicide thing, right? Yeah. So there are a lot of things that was it an accident? Yeah. 100%. But was it really? So there's even more. It is a deep and wide thing, no doubt about it. And I appreciate your question. What I can say is that when we know this, we do our best to do increased outreach to these groups that are particularly vulnerable. So we don't know the why of it, but what we can do is we can say, okay, I am extra worried about you because of this particular situation. And so I'm going to reach around and I'm going to do more outreach to you. So that's kind of how we handle it here at Moore Park College, right? All right.
Like we're asking, I think because it's such a huge gap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might have taken, like by the time you compile the statistics.
Yeah.
For
Like,
16
how
years,
we know
there's
that
been-
until like
Yeah.
Right.
No, I know. I know. It's not ideal. And the key element here, guys, really is just to let you know there is a problem, right? And even if it's gone down or if it's gone a little bit up for that group, it's not going to be significantly different now as it was then. It's just not. Especially now, if you think about all the stuff that's happening in the world now. I mean, it's just it really affects how young people feel, how anybody feels, you know? All right, so the really good, thoughtful questions. Thank you. All right, so in Ventura County, you can see along ethnic lines, the rates of suicide there. And then in the Latinx community, the prevalence of depression in women is 46%, and it's greater than Latinx men, 19.6%. We also know there's a lack of Latinx healthcare professionals available for those seeking help. We have now actually 3 mental health providers who identify as Latinx and who speak Spanish. We are working really hard to reach out to our Latinx students here on campus. And so we're doing a lot to try to ameliorate this, right? Question again?
sorry, kind of, so.
Yeah.
It's interesting because in the Latin community, the suicide rate of men is significantly higher than for women. So it says depression though.
Right.
Men are just more proactive about their depression.
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. You'll see in statistics later that men have a higher rate of suicide than women
Well, yeah.
too. partly because of the lethality of the method. The lethality, the deadliness of the methods used. You'll see it in a sec. Hopefully it'll all come together and kind of make a little more sense. But I'm with you. I agree. Yeah. Okay, so it was the second leading cause of death for Asian Americans aged 15 to 34. Those of all Asian Americans, those aged 20 to 21 had the highest suicide rate, right? In Asian American cultures, mental health can be viewed as a weakness. So it's a kind of a continuing theme, right? And this is why we spend so much effort talking about reducing stigma. We want to reduce stigma for everyone, right? Mental health in the Asian American cultures, mental health can be viewed as a weakness. Talking openly about anything emotional like sadness, disappointments, life events, it's rarely encouraged. And this is not everywhere. I don't want to put a giant blanket statement everywhere on all Asian cultures, but just be aware that that is kind of a commonality and just something that we need to tuck away. All right. In the white community, white males have the highest suicide rate. In California, 2020, 61% of suicides of people who were white. Okay. All right, in the LGBTQ community, and I want to preface this by saying there is nothing inherently weak about the LGBTQ community. There is an acceptance issue, which can make people in any community, if you're not feeling accepted, that would cause depression or anxiety and could be a precursor to depression. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's a really good point. We don't have statistics in here about that, but I know there have been for sure. And that's another vulnerable, yeah, definitely a vulnerable population. Anybody who's lost somebody close to them like that, a family member, is more vulnerable. Same with friends. Friends of people who have killed themselves are at least for a period of time more vulnerable. Absolutely. That's a very insightful question. All right. So 69% of LGBTQ plus youth reported feeling persistently sad and hopeless compared to 35% in the heterosexual youth. 35% of trans teens have attempted suicide. So LGBTQ people attempt suicide at 5 times the rate of heterosexual individuals and 8.5 times if there is family rejection. So you can see how the sense of rejection versus acceptance can change the way people, consider suicide, right? Does that make sense? Right. So you can imagine if everybody just accepted everybody and everybody got a fair deal, we'd probably not see so many differences from ethnicity to these different groups, right? All right. So veterans are another high risk group for suicide. 2020, 6,146 veterans died by suicide. That means 20 veterans die by suicide each day in the United States. It was the second leading cause of death among veterans under the age of 45. They have an adjusted suicide rate that is 57.3% greater than non-veteran US population, right? And veterans account for about 13.9% of suicides. So a lot of suicides. The suicide helpline actually has a specific extension just for veterans because it's such a significant and profound problem. Doesn't mean that all veterans are suicidal or depressed or anxious, but enough of them are that it makes it worth it to decrease stigma and to reach out more to this population. Does that make sense? Okay. And again, we kind of saw the statistic a little bit earlier. People ages 85 and older have the highest rate of suicide. Can we think of why that might be? Why might older folks? Yeah. Quality of life. Yeah. What were you going to say? Yeah, like they could be having some medical issues.
Yeah.
Yes, did everybody hear what she said? They could feel like a burden on others, the family members and friends, yeah.
A lot of like probably the closest people are gone.
Yeah, 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 especially if they, in their social group is only people their age. Yeah, for sure. Anything else? That was excellent. Good job. Yes, absolutely, to all of those. Okay, and so again, we have male versus female in Ventura County. We can see that the male rate is higher than the female rate isn't even in the top 10, but the male rate is, and overall ninth leading cause. So this is part of the suicide behavior questionnaire that was part of that health survey that I was just telling you about and hoping that you would check your email for and maybe do for us. But one of the things that they were saying is that of people that were highest rated for having the most likely to consider suicide, right? So the highest screening for that were the trans or gender non-conforming, oh my gosh, students, right? You can see it was double the rate of cis men and women, right? So again, this is a group that has felt unaccepted, has felt anxious, has felt, I mean, truly hopeless and depressed in many ways because of society's view of them, not because there's anything inherently wrong with them, right? So again, COVID-19, I know it feels like a distant memory, but it still continues to be a thing for us, right? We have students now that grew up like in their homes for what, a year or two, right? Lacking social skills, lacking the ability to like interact with different people in person. And it's been really difficult. And we're noticing a lot more use of our mental health services than we used to have. But what's really great is we have a lot more providers than we used to have too. So we have no waiting for mental health appointments on our campus, none. You can be seen for crisis. If we're open, you can be seen right away for crisis. So just be aware of that. We are trying to rise up to the need that has been put upon us by the pandemic and by the being stuck at home. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Since post-COVID, would you say, what role would you say that social media affects? In terms of, the uptake in visitors that you guys seen to?
Yes, we definitely have people coming in for bullying, people coming in just anxiety over, because there's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of real news that's terrible, but also fake news that's terrible. And so people are really anxious. And I know that our providers actually try to get you to kind of put the social media away, put it aside, because it really is very upsetting to a lot of people, not just students here, but everywhere. So those definitely take.
And through, screenings, has there been more, I guess, more of a highlighted study, I guess, comparing the rates of anxiety disorder, depression disorder, and those that take, screenings if they, are, they have suicidal thoughts, which one, if more severe than the other, and aid kind of more, be more like, harder to treat or something like
Depression versus anxiety, and has one had more of an impact on suicidality? Well, we screen everybody. Let's just say that, first of all students that come to the Student Health Center for an appointment get a mental health screening. We do 100%, and we do it every time they come in. So just be aware of that. And that we're able to pick up a lot of high screening people and refer them to mental health. I do know that there has been a little bit of recent research. It was really interesting to find out about how much more than we thought anxiety leads to suicidal thought too. So that is a thing for sure. But just be aware that when students, when students come in for any sort of treatment, we do check that and we do make referrals, and our providers are excellent with college students. They do a really good job. And if you need more than we can give you, we have a case manager that can actually refer you out to more resources in the community. So we really take good care of you there. Hopefully that kind of answered your question. Okay. So again, I mentioned this before, but there is a lack of culturally and linguistically appropriate mental health services for people across the country, and I would say across the world probably. We are doing our best on that. We try to recruit providers that more closely match our student population here so that we can meet you where you are. But everybody that works for us at least is aware of, those challenges and can do wonders with our case manager to find you somebody that is culturally or linguistically appropriate for you too. So just be aware of that. And I'm going to show you a resource a little bit later that will help you find somebody for the appropriate provider for you or someone you love. Okay, so we mentioned this before. Remember, I was talking about the lethality of, yeah. So when you look at these are kind of the lethality, the method of injury. So guns are the most lethal, and males are more likely to use guns than females are, which is part of the reason why the suicide rate is higher for men. There's hanging and suffocation. It's about even for men and women. Poisoning. And when we say poisoning, that includes like drug doses and stuff. That's part of that poisoning thing, right? And that's more likely women use that method to male. I had mentioned before that sometimes automobile accidents are really not accidents. That's a way of, there are other. Jumping off a bridge would it be an example of another, right? So there are lots and lots of different ways that people might attempt suicide or kill themselves in that other category, right? All right, and then if we look at different suicide rates, Wyoming had 22.8 per 100,000 people, Montana 21. So you can see kind of the list. It turns out that the places with the lowest often have the best gun control laws. So that's a really important thing to be aware of too. All right. So this is important to realize. Undiagnosed and untreated depression, we had mentioned this before, is the #1 cause for suicide. Even though we're also saying that anxiety can be a precursor for sure, still depression is the most common. And expressing hopelessness is the #1 clue for suicide. #1 clue for suicide. So if somebody says to you, I don't know what there's nothing I can do. I'm hopeless about the situation. That's a time when your ears should perk up. Okay. So if you look at this, you can see these two scans, brain scans, and what do you notice? Just right off the bat, some really easy things to just notice right away. Yeah. Yeah, there's lower activity in the in the depressed one, right? It's all blue, not very many lit up places in it, right? Compared to, so what do you think that means? Yeah.
The brain,
Well, not so much atrophied, but if these different centers are not lit up, that means they're not working, right? They're not making decisions. They're not, different parts of the brain aren't communicating with each other and so forth. It's harder to make decisions, and it's harder to see that there's another way, right? So what are some of the signs or symptoms of depression? What have you heard about that are signs or symptoms of depression? Yeah. Yeah, losing interest in hobbies. Yep. What else? Yeah. Loss of motivation. Yeah, loss of motivation. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
loss in appetite,
Yeah, or,
loss in appetite, or appetite, loss in appetite. You find just as eagerly you will find ways to connect with people, you'll figure out ways to get out.
yeah, oh, that's a really interesting way of putting that.
You're almost like you are validating. Because no one else is going, or you feel like no one else is going with you because the time is ready for it.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of self-talk, yeah.
In a time when you make an excuse for yourself, you're being your own neighbor.
That's a good point. The other thing is you had mentioned decreased appetite, also increased appetite could be a sign, yeah.
Insomnia.
Yes, oh, very good, good words. Any other things that you can think of? These are all absolutely spot on, yeah.
That's
Yes, yeah, absolutely. What else? Yeah,
Sedentary.
yeah, or just kind of no energy, low energy, kind of your lack of motivation that you mentioned. Yeah, yep, all of those things. So we talked about, I think these are all profound sadness, guilt, or shame, and that hopelessness that we were talking about earlier, same thing. Yep, all of those things. So, and then if you go back to that brain scan, problems concentrating or making decisions, right? Withdrawing from friends or family that you mentioned, helplessness, hopelessness. So some people begin to have thoughts of death or suicide or wishing to be dead too. That's actually a symptom of depression. All right. And there are a lot of myths about depression out there, which kind of prolong some of the stigma that that's attached. So a common myth is no one can stop a suicide. It's inevitable, right? Actually, not true. I wouldn't be standing here with you today if that were true, right? These kinds of programs really are effective and they really work. If people in crisis get the help they need, they will probably never be suicidal again. Most of the time, that's the case. If you confront somebody about suicide, it'll only make them angry and increase the risk of suicide. That's actually also a myth. That's not true. Asking somebody directly about suicide intent lowers anxiety, opens up communication, and lowers the risk of an impulsive act. And I will tell you that part of today is teaching you how to ask somebody the question of if they're feeling suicidal, right? And I can tell you that I ask this question all the time, sometimes multiple times in a day, right? And people tend to be either relieved that they're not suicidal or relieved that I asked them that they are suicidal. They really think they're crazy or they're embarrassed about it or whatever. But when somebody asks that question, they're like, oh, I must not be the only one, right? So just be aware of that. Only experts can prevent suicide. Well, again, would I be here? No, I would not. Suicide prevention is everyone's business and everyone can help prevent it, right? Just by noticing the signs and by asking the question and getting the help. Okay, so here's another common one. Suicidal people keep their plans to themselves. Although that is sometimes true, most suicidal people communicate their intent at some time during the week preceding their intent. It's just not always their attempt, I should say. It's not always obvious that that's what they're doing, but that is, that is the case. People that talk about suicide don't do it. Again, people who do talk about suicide may try or even complete an act of self-destruction, right? Once a person decides to complete suicide, there's nothing anybody can do to stop them. Again, nope, wouldn't be here if that were the case. We absolutely can prevent it by asking the questions and getting the help that the person needs, right? Okay, so here are some clues and warning signs. The more clues and signs observed, the greater the risk. Take all signs seriously. All right, so some people will be direct. Most people are not, in my opinion, or in my experience, direct, but some people are, have decided to kill myself. More often you'll hear, I wish I were dead. Sometimes people say, I'm going to commit suicide, I'm going to kill myself, right? I'm going to end it all. If such and such doesn't happen, I'll kill myself. And this is where we always tell the story of a student that we had here on campus who was in a math class and he was getting a B. And he needed an A, or at least he perceived that he needed an A to get into medical school. And there was a lot of family pressure on him to get into medical school. And so he was in his class and he said, I'm going to kill myself if I get a B in this class. And luckily, somebody in the class heard him say that and took him over to the health center just to have him evaluated and have us check in with him and see what kind of help he needed. And it turns out that he was being very honest, that was his intent. But he got the help he needed, and he began to realize that there were other things that he could do if he didn't get into medical school. And we helped him get through that period of time with a lot of treatment and help, right? So when you hear people say stuff like that, a lot of times we kind of blow it off and we go, oh, they're just, like, oh, I'm going to kill myself if this happens again. Sometimes it's an exaggeration, but sometimes it's not. And I would recommend that you always take that seriously when you hear people saying something like that. Does that make sense? Yeah, we always want to take that seriously. Sometimes it's less direct, and more commonly it's less direct. I would say, I'm tired of life. I just can't go on. And sometimes we'll hear that. Some of you mentioned that when we were talking, especially about elderly people. My family would be better off without me. Who cares if I'm dead anyway? Those kinds of things that people say, that those should prompt a question from you. Are you thinking about killing yourself? Right? Those would be times to ask that question. Pretty soon you won't have to worry about me. And again, more indirect and verbal clues. I don't think I'll live past 21. I'm sick of it and everyone is sick of me, right? Those are the kinds of comments people might make that you would want to really check in and do some questioning and get the person some help. So again, culture and context determine kind of the language that we use. I volunteer with exchange students, and we had some exchange students. It's super common in Italy, actually. But I'm just going to kill myself. Oh, I'm going to kill myself, right? And they don't mean it, but do we take it seriously anyway? We absolutely do. And at a minimum, they learn not to say that around us here, because we take it seriously, right? And that is true for you. Like we have my son, one time, he was a real avid skater when he was in high school, and we told him he had to wear a helmet. They were doing really dangerous stuff on their skateboards and falling all the time, and I wanted him to wear a helmet, and I caught him not wearing a helmet at the park. And I took his skateboard away for a week. I just told him he wasn't allowed to skate. If he can't wear his helmet, he can't. So he informed us that he was going to kill himself. So I put him in the car and I took him up to Ventura, and he met with the psychologist. And it wasn't a punishment. It was like, I was really worried that was, as he thought, that was such a big deal that it was worthy of killing himself over, right? And he didn't use that language with us again, right? Because he realized that we were going to take that seriously. And that's something that's important to do. When people talk like that to you, it's important to ask the question, not to punish them or whatever have you, but just to help them be really careful with their words or get help if they need it. Okay, so there could be behavioral clues too. Any previous suicide attempt, acquiring a gun, or stockpiling pills. If they're depressed and moody and hopeless all at the same time, putting personal affairs in order, that's a big one. So if I do that, that's smart. I'm old. I need to get my act together, right? My personal affairs in order. Is it common or normal for an 18-year-old to do that though? No, like what affairs do they have, right? But we had a student here, it's been a few years now, who started giving away like family heirlooms, like jewelry and things like that to her friends, right? And that alerted people around her to be concerned about it, right? And so she got the help she needed, and we did discover that she was suicidal. So those kinds of things really should be big clues. This is another example. My son had a friend in middle school who actually did kill himself, and it was just devastating and terrible, like it always is. But he said, oh, he seemed so happy, which you often hear, right? He gave me his Trapper Keeper, which was this super fancy, like little organizer of papers that junior high kids in the 80s and early 90s had, right? They're making a comeback, the Trapper Keeper. Oh my gosh. Well, he loved it. And this kid had a super cool one. I don't remember exactly, but he gave it to my son, and I had no idea. If I had known that had happened, I wouldn't necessarily have thought that he was suicidal, but I definitely would have called his mom and said, hey, your son gave my son this Trapper Keeper. What's, I want to make sure you know that, right? At a minimum, I would have done that, but he didn't see it as any sort of abnormal behavior, right? So that's another example of his personal affairs in order and giving away prized possessions. Sudden interest or disinterest in religion is a tip-off. So drug or alcohol abuse and relapse. So that's a couple of things. It's a symptom of depression, but also, especially with alcohol, when you drink alcohol, one of its effects is it's a depressant, and it actually can lower your threshold for depression and suicidal action, right? Suicidal thought and action. Same with unexplained anger, aggression, irritability, revenge, anything like that. Yeah. It could. What's really interesting about that too is that the withdrawal also causes depression, which is kind of a two-edged sword. Definitely alcohol has much more of an effect than nicotine or other drugs too. Yeah. They have some of the same effects. Well, I can tell you when I did my my caffeine withdrawal, it was pretty, I had a lot of these symptoms, not suicide ideation, but a lot of them. The other one is engaging in risky activities. That's a pretty common one, especially in this age group here. You'll have students that, go to a party and have a few drinks, but suddenly they start drinking 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 drinks, or getting really just blackout drunk a lot, or driving fast, or instead of having sex with one partner, they have sex with multiple partners, and that's just an out of the ordinary thing for them. So just like an increase in risky behaviors, really not uncommon, not uncommon. Okay, so then there are also some things that can happen that could trigger suicidal thought, right? Being fired or suspended from school, a recent unwanted move that happens for a lot of reasons. And so the cause of the move can also be part of it. Like you lost your job and you had to move back home with your parents, or we have this happens in the incarcerated populations where the families have to move because one of the parents is incarcerated. This is the one that you mentioned earlier, death of a spouse, child, or best friend, especially if by suicide. Or diagnosis, somebody mentioned this earlier, of a serious or terminal illness. That's another really common one. Again, sudden, unexpected loss of freedom or fear of punishment. So somebody who is suddenly getting incarcerated, that's often why they have like a suicide watch and that kind of thing when somebody first goes into prison. And anticipated loss of financial security, layoffs, firings, those sorts of things. Fear of becoming a burden to others. That's what we mentioned earlier with elderly people. The bullying, the social media piece that we were talking about earlier, there's a tremendous amount of bullying happening. What do you think? Do you think that college students get bullied?
Desensitized because it's like you can go on Twitter and see someone die and like it doesn't even have a pure expression anything.
Oh yeah, no.
Like people comments are just like not even reacting to the fact that
Yeah.
like they're like making fun of that person's appearance or something along those lines. And it's like you go to see how just desensitized I feel like everyone is. So I feel like everyone's kind of become more accepting of being called, you know, like different slurs or
Yeah.
in a certain way that it's not pressure them. I think especially because of the erratic behavior of a lot of people.
Could be, yeah.
Really prevalent people that do have differences or do have homeless and how they might react
Yeah,
to
the bullying,
some
yeah.
person that was extreme. So I think that's a lot of what I have to do.
Absolutely, sure. That's a piece for sure, yeah.
I actually ran into this situation. I decided in high school and one of my friends was told that the girl who broke up with was suicidal. But she wasn't. It was just a way of getting the attention back.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was, I don't think it's bullying, but I don't think it's just joke about something so serious.
Right, yeah,
Give that,
yeah,
that field of like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
right.
It's like it's not a joke to me. I took it very to heart.
Correct.
With everybody involved.
Correct. Correct.
But if that was really the case, you know, like to talk about that in such a non-serious manner, like you know,
Mhm.
be sensitized to it. Oh, kind of like shit happens. But
Right.
reality is making it known that there is mental illness out there that's not really talked about, and making it more comfortable to talk about it, probably lower the rates.
100%, yeah. And we have plenty of students on this campus who have had that experience where they go back into this horrible relationship that they just broke off because of fear of that. But the better solution is to get the person help. That's the better solution. There was another hand up too, bullying, yeah. Yeah,
Now that we're talking about before, you were saying that there's like signs that goes on to suicide.
there can be, yeah.
Do you think like it's ever impulsive? Like how long after like something like this happens do you like know friends about it?
It 100% can be impulsive. It can be, but a lot of times there's thought about it, but they didn't do anything about it. And all of a sudden there's this opportunity, right? And so a lot of times people in the back of their brains have a plan and they have a method, right? And then there could be some sort of trigger that just makes them go really fast on the freeway, go the wrong way on the freeway. Take, there just happens to be a hill that they could, or I'm trying to think of the name of it, the little curve on the 23, that's another place. So that it kind of has to be, there's a plan, they're kind of in the back of the head, there's this idea in the back of the head, and then this thing happens, and it can definitely feel like an impulsive act, but in general, there's like in the background, there's a little bit of a kind of a plan too. Does that make sense? And every case is a little bit different, right? But these are the elements. Yeah.
Is it like, could a sign be like, say if something tragic to them happens, or like an event and then they deal with it like too well, or like you notice they don't.
They just bury it. They bury it and don't do anything. That absolutely can happen, and then it can come back later for sure. Absolutely. That's why it's a really good idea to have things like grief counseling. And the Hospice of Conejo has a really, really good grief group for people for exactly that reason. And actually, when we have students that are reported to us, like they lost a parent or they lost some, a loved one or whatever, we often refer them there because that's a really good time to help them kind of, deal with it real time instead of having it build up inside for sure. Yeah, these are great questions, A+. All right. So now we're going to move into the QPR part of this, right? The skills, right? And so we're going to talk about the steps that we take to help save a life. All right. So the Q is for question, and these are tips for asking the question, right? So if in doubt, Like we've talked about a lot of, is this really suicide or not? We talked a little bit about that. If you're in doubt, don't wait, ask the question. Like with my son, okay, we're gonna take you to the therapist and we're gonna get on top of this, right? There's any doubt, ask the question. If the person is reluctant, be persistent. Sometimes they want to avoid answering the question. They don't want to talk about it, that's the time to really be persistent. The other thing is you don't want to, like in the middle of a big crowd, say something to them, right? You want to kind of pull them aside and give them some privacy. Make sure that you have time and that you are able to talk to the person freely, right? If you don't have time, but you're concerned that this person is at risk for suicide, find somebody who can help them. If you're at school and it's another student, for sure, bring them to the health center, right? That's a great place to get help. How you ask the question is less important than that you do. Again, we're going to practice asking the question today, but it's really important to practice it over and over again too. So there are less direct approaches. Have you been feeling, kind of work up to it? Have you been feeling unhappy lately? Very unhappy lately? Have you been so very unhappy that you've been thinking about ending your life? You could say that, or killing yourself, or committing suicide, or suiciding. That's a verb now. Yeah. For little kids, you could say, do you ever wish you could go to sleep and never wake up? That's an age-appropriate way to ask a kid that. Or you could be more direct. When people are hurting or as upset as much as you are, sometimes they wish they were dead. I'm wondering if you're feeling that way too. Or are you thinking about killing yourself? And frankly, that's the one I ask. Are you thinking about killing yourself? It's just very direct and it kind of surprises people a little bit, but it tells you like it's a common thing that people feel that way. So you're not weird that you're feeling that way, but let's get to the bottom line here and get you some help, right? So being really direct is really helpful. If you can't ask the question, sometimes you could ask it of your friend that sits next to you in this class, but you would have a hard time asking somebody else. Somebody you don't know, or maybe somebody that you know really well, and you just don't feel comfortable asking that question, right? So if you can't ask it, get somebody to ask it. Okay, there are ways that are not great to ask it, right? You're not thinking about killing yourself, are you? You wouldn't do anything stupid, would you? Or suicide is a dumb idea. You're not thinking about suicide, are you? Why are those bad ways to ask this question? Yeah. They sound very judgmental for sure. What else? What else is wrong with them?
They're probably more likely to like lie if they are.
Right, because you're kind of giving them the right answer. Yeah. Well, true. Right. So all of those things, that's just, it's kind of, it's a bad way to ask the question and we don't want to do it that way. Okay. So once you get the, so say they say no, then what? Let's go back. What if they say no? Are you still kind of worried about them? Like, why did you ask? Right? You're still a little worried about them, right? So do you just say, oh, good, go to class. I'm going to go this way, you go that way. No, it's still a good idea to give them help, right? To make sure that we have a lot of resources on this on this card here. We have the suicide hotline. We have the student health center number if they're a student here. We have the crisis text line. So there are lots of ways that you can still help the person because obviously they're not doing great or you wouldn't have asked the question to begin with. Does that make sense? But if they say, yes, I am thinking about that, then the next thing is to persuade, right? So we're going to persuade somebody to stay alive now. So the first thing is just to listen to the problem, right? And give your full attention. Remembering that suicide is not the problem, it's only the solution to a perceived insoluble problem. One of my really good friends who's a therapist says it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem, right? So it's it's interesting too, because what we find out is sometimes people are just in the middle of a whole bunch of stuff that's going on at the same time. And it seems, especially when they have that brain that's not lighting up, right? That they're not coming up with solutions to their problems. There could be, I lost my job and now my car won't start. And, you know, all of these things are just mounting, right? And I just can't get on top of it. That's not an uncommon scenario to cause somebody to think about killing themselves, right? And so all the more reason to make sure that that person gets help, but to say things like, you know, do not rush to judgment, don't judge them, offer hope in any form. If they're a student here, we have really good like financial aid for things like my car won't start, or I need, you know, my battery died, or my tires are flat. I've talked to students who have been really down in the dumps and thinking about suicide because of that, not aware that they could get an emergency loan here, or they're hungry and they didn't know about Raider Central, right? So we have so many reasons, or they're failing their whatever, fill in the blank class and didn't know we had free tutoring. So it's not that you can put a Band-Aid on and fix everything, but there are so many things that we could do for students here that would just alleviate that pressure and help them. So those are things that you can do to persuade them. Hey, there are things that we can do to help what's going on here. Let me take you to the student health center if they're a student here, right, to get some help. Persistent statements that suicide is not a good solution. Look, there are too many people that would miss you. I would miss you. Your family would miss you. Thinking about healthy alternatives. Again, I mentioned a bunch of them, especially for students here on campus. There's free help for you. Accept their pain, but offer alternatives and be respectful. You know, things like boy, that would be really hard if I were going through that. I would imagine it would be very, very difficult. That must be hard for you. How can I help you? Let me get you a ride to blah, blah, blah. Let me watch your kids while you do this thing over here. Offering hope and help in any way you can is really beneficial, right? So the other thing is getting them to treatment. And if they tell you that they've had treatment before and it hasn't worked, you could try asking, what if this time it does work? That's a really, it's not uncommon for people to have an experience of therapy and they just didn't click with the therapist. That's why we have so many different therapists on our campus right now, so that if one doesn't work, then another one would. And that's the same with community therapists as well. And then the next thing is to refer. You have a bunch of referral sources, both on your card and in your brochure there. It helps the best if you can take them to the referral, like if you're on campus here, taking them to the student health center. Let me help you get help. Maybe let me make an appointment for you, or things like that. And then will you promise not to kill yourself until we found some help? That's like the third best one. And really checking back with the person too, right? So listening, commitment to help, that's important. And then I mentioned earlier the thing about alcohol lowering the, you know, the depression and suicidality threshold. Really being willing to stay sober is another piece of it too. And if you can get the person to commit to that, that's really important. So these are, if you have your phone and you want to take a picture of the slide, this is a really good slide. Remember, I mentioned that the veterans have their own button to press 1 when you call 988 for veterans. If your person that you're talking to is in the LGBTQIA community, there's a Trevor help lifeline on there. The 741-741 crisis text line is there. So all kinds of really good resources for students and non-students too. Maybe the person that you're worried about is not a student here. There are lots of community resources here. We also mentioned, or I also mentioned, the dearth or the lack of culturally and linguistically appropriate therapists. These are good ways of finding psychologytoday.com and inclusivetherapist.com are good ways of finding those folks. The other thing is if you're in a situation where somebody has a weapon or an object that can be used as a weapon, make sure that you are safe. Call 911 from a safe place. Do the best you can to describe what's happening, but remember, you are very important and we don't want you to get hurt, right? So calling 911 from a safe place is the right and appropriate thing. If you see somebody passed out, is that a 911 call? Yeah, even if it's at a party and you know they're just passed out drunk, people can die of alcohol poisoning, which could be one of those hidden suicide, you know, just drinking so much to die kind of things. Okay, almost all efforts to persuade somebody to live instead of attempting suicide will be met with agreement and relief, so don't hesitate to get involved. Don't shy away from it, okay? So again, want you to live, get others involved, get help. If you're in a team sport, get the if you're in a team sport here, we have 2 therapists down in athletics. If they are somebody who's at a church or a synagogue, maybe get that person involved, get members of the family involved, participate and help where you can, okay? All right, so now it's time to practice. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to have about 5 minutes. We're going to have one person that's going to get the salmon colored paper. This is your you're going to read about what's going on in your life here. You're going to be partnered with somebody that's the gatekeeper or the KPR person, right? So you're going to kind of read what's going on. And then friend, you're going to ask them questions and eventually get to, are you thinking about killing yourself question. That is the goal of this, to get to that question, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pair you up. If you decide this is not right for you to do today, that's fine, just pass and we'll just pair somebody else up, okay? Does that make sense? All right. So yeah, move around with them. They have YouTube. Oh, great, thank you. There you go. That happens. All right. And then, all right. Okay, if you have it started already, get started. Okay.
Almost there. Almost there. Almost.
What a good question.
Yeah, no, they're thoughtful. What was that?
So fast. Okay.
Oh, I know, it's always fast.